Hello there. Welcome to Hidden Treasure Books. How can I help you today? Okay, well, we can certainly help you find a book. We carry a large selection of old and rare books. Many of them are used, so not all of them are in wonderful condition, but when you're getting a book from, say, the 1800s, you can't always expect it to be in pristine condition. We also carry books by lesser-known authors, so we have a lot of indie author books, and we can order anything for you that we don't have. If you want a newer copy of a book, we can do that as well. We are an accredited bookstore, so we have connections. Is there something specific that you're looking for? A gift for a friend? Okay, we can certainly help you out with that. Do you know what kind of genres that your friend prefers? Okay, so probably something in the fantasy genre. Does your friend have children at all? Okay, so maybe some children's books as well. Alright, well, there are a few books that come to mind, some that are old and some that are new, and some that are, again, some lesser-known authors. So why don't I grab a few that I think your friend might enjoy, and I'll take you through them, and you can see if you think it'd be something that your friend would enjoy. And then, of course, you're welcome to peruse our selection and see if you find anything else that you think she might like. Okay? I'll just run back and grab a few and meet you back here, okay? Okay. So, got a few that I think your friend might be interested in. So we'll start with a classic. So these are The Lord of the Rings, and we have these in our rare books collection because this set is from 1974. As you can see, the covers on these are very worn. Most of the covers are taped together and they're falling off a little bit, but they are from 1974, so they've been well loved. They're paperbacks, which do not hold up as well as hardcover books. The unique thing about this particular set, and of course we do have the entire set, we have the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King. And what's really cool about this particular set is that the covers on each of these were painted by J.R.R. Tolkien himself. So each of these covers is a work of art by Tolkien himself. So you're really getting two gifts in one here. You get the old set from the 1974 printing of Lord of the Rings, and each book is its own work of art of Tolkien's painting. So that's kind of a cool feature about this particular set. On the back of each one is a picture of Tolkien himself in his most hobbit-like form with his pipe, and the hobbits are always some of his favorite creatures, so it's just kind of cool. Again, these are worn, but there's no writing or anything in them, so the pages are pretty clean and everything's held together pretty well. There are a few stains here and there, but no one has dog-eared any of the pages, and no one's made any writing marks into it, so it's basically most of the damage and the wear and tear on this set is restricted to the covers. Again, this one is really taped down. The one probably in the best shape is The Return of the King, but even that one, there's a lot of creases on the front and a little bit of tape on the side. But again, paperbacks from 1974, they've seen a little bit of mileage, and they were some that were well loved, being such a classic book series. This set in particular, we are not selling them singly. We are selling it as the entire set because they do go together, since they're all from the same era of printing, and they all have the J.R.R. Tolkien covers. So it's definitely a rare set that you don't see very many of these today, so might be something your friend would be interested in. Now this is another cool one. This is from 1967, And this is a Reader's Digest compilation of fairy tales. They call it the world's best fairy tales. And it's true, most of the ones in here are just fabulous fairy tales. There's a lot of classic fairy tales. You know, you've got the Snow Queen, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White. You know, so you've got all your classics in here. But there's also a lot of ones that aren't quite as common. You know, you've got the Golden-Headed Fish, Little One-Eye, Little Two-Eye, Little Three-Eyes, which is kind of just another version of Cinderella, but it's always fun to see the different versions that go into similar stories. There's the Six Swans, there's Sinbad the Sailor is a really magical one, you know, and takes you across the ocean in a bunch of different places, and that's actually quite a long one for an old fairy tale, but this one also has some of the much older versions of the fairy tales, as opposed to the nicer versions that we've become accustomed to. For example, in Snow White, the way the queen dies is actually kind of brutal, so may not be the best one to read to young children, but it's a really cool book. And of course all the well, not all of them, but about every third story I think has pictures, which is always nice when you're reading fairy tales. Let's see, who else have we got here? Oh, here's one from the Snow Queen. It's fairly nice artwork in this book to go with all the little fairy tales. So yeah, I think it's about 1 in 3 stories has got the pictures to go with them. Here's one from the Bronze Ring. That's a really good fairy tale if you've never read that one. Again, it's got all the common ones that you'd be looking for, but also many of the rarer ones, and a lot of them are the old Arabian fairy tales as well, which are always kind of fun. So this one is a hardcover book, so it's actually older than the Lord of the Rings books I just showed you, but being a hardcover, it does hold up better, so it's in better shape. There's a little bit of taping on the cover on the outside, but for the most part, you can even still see the words here, so for the most part it's in pretty good shape. A little bit of fading on the cover, and of course the pages used to have that gold tint on them. I don't know if you can see it, it's mostly rubbed off, but so, you know, the gold tint has rubbed off over the years, but this is really a great book for adults and children alike, because they're just classic fairy tales, and some of the more rare fairy tales. It's just a really fun book, but again, you know, some of them you might want to pre-read ahead of time before reading them to children, because some of the older versions of the fairy tales aren't quite as cheerful as like the Disney versions are. So, but it's a really good book, so might be one to consider. Now this is one by an indie author from upstate New York. It's not a very well-known one because I think we are the only bookstore that carries it. It is available online, but it's not in a lot of bookstores. So this is Silverwood by Amber Reefsteck. She's kind of a strange person who's from upstate New York, has kind of a weird sense of humor, and I think she makes costumes and does flower bouquets for a living, but does a little bit of writing on the side. There are no pictures in this book. It's just a single story, and it's about sorcerers and magic and moon magic and things like that. And it's a fairly easy read. You know, there's good spacing in the pages, so it's a fairly easy read. It's about 235 pages, so it's not a really, you know, huge effort to read this one, but it's long enough to be longer than, say, like the short fairy tales, so that's one to consider. This is another one by the same author. This is one that she wrote and illustrated as well. This is a little Halloween book. This one is for young children. And I'll open it up here. You can see some of the pictures here. These were, she says in the author bio, that the pictures were inspired by old Halloween cards. If you've ever seen any of those from the early 1900s, that's what inspired this book, she says. So it's a rhyming children's book, and it's a short story. It's a Halloween themed book, so it's one to be read at Halloween, of course. But if your friend has young children, that might be one to consider as well. Again, it's available online, but not in many bookstores. I think we are the only bookstore that stocks this, so if you want a signed copy, you can get one right here from this bookstore. So. This is one called The Water Babies. As you can see, this is an older book again. This one, it's actually so old that they don't even have the printing year in it, but on the front page, a lot of people used to write who they got the book from and what year it was, because a lot of these were given for Christmas. And so this one says Christmas '05, so we're assuming that that's probably Christmas 1905, because pretty sure it's not an 1805 book. It's awfully modern for 1805. But so this book is likely from 1905, and it's a hardcover. It's in excellent condition for being, you know, over 100 years old. And it is a cute story. It's a fairy tale. It's very much a fairy tale. And, you know, there are illustrations, not on every page, but every few pages there are little illustrations to go with the story. And again, it's very much like some of the shorter fairy tales that you're used to, but it's a longer book, so it's basically an extended fairy tale. And the tagline in it is very cute. It's called The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley, and it says it's a fairy tale for a land baby. So The Water Babies is a fairy tale for a land baby. And one of the interesting features of this is right at the end, it has the moral of the story, because it is an older book and they used to put morals in all the stories. So this one actually has the moral written out in the story, which is kind of a fun feature, because not all books have those, and usually today they don't. So it's just kind of fun from a historical perspective to see the moral of the story. So The Water Babies is one to consider. Now this one is Robinson Crusoe. This is, of course, a classic, and I'm sure your friend has read this at least once. This one in particular, this one is, again, it's an old one, so they don't have a publishing date in it, but on the front page it does say Christmas 1910. So this one is at least from 1910, possibly farther back, we're not sure, but somewhere around 1910. So again, it is over 100 years old. It does have pictures in it. Not a lot of pictures, but, you know, I think there's about one every chapter or every 2 chapters. There are pictures in it, which is always kind of fun, because most novels don't have pictures in them anymore. Here's Friday's first suit of clothes. Now this one, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it fantasy as much as adventure, but it is a classic, so your friend might enjoy it. Again, it's a hardcover, so it's held up very well for being over 100 years old. You can see there's not much torn apart on it. There is a little hole in the pages where a bookworm may have gotten into it, because yes, there are actual literal bookworms that chew apart book pages. There's another one of the pictures on the lookout. And the pictures are a little bit stained and, of course, have been chewed through a little bit, but again, there's no dog-eared pages and no one's written on it or anything, so for being over 100 years old, it's not in bad shape, really, and it's a nice piece of history to have in anyone's collection, especially if your friend likes adventure books, which she likes fantasy. She might like just good old-fashioned adventure, too, so there's another one to consider. And then the last one I want to show you here is, this is Fairy Houses, How to Create Whimsical Homes for Fairy Folk by Sally J. Smith. This is not an old book, obviously. This is a fairly new book, but I'm showing you this because if your friend likes fantasy, she will probably love this book. It's a nice hardcover book, and it's a really great one if you just want to, you know, like relax at the end of an evening. There's some beautiful fairy house pictures in here. This one's one of my favorites. That's a great one right there. And it shows you not only all the different fairy houses that she builds, but also how to build them. There's a whole section on, the tools and the techniques that you'll be needing to build fairy houses. And of course, like I say, just staring at all of her beautiful creations is so much fun, even if you don't actually want to build fairy houses. One of the great things I really like about this author is that she's very conscious of the nature in which she builds her fairy houses. The houses that she's building outdoors and plans to leave out there, she always makes sure that she uses natural glues that will biodegrade or pins things together with thorns, things that aren't going to damage the landscape in any way. So she's very conscious of the materials she uses in an outdoor setting, and then she saves the stronger glues and slightly less natural materials for the fairy houses that she creates inside the studios. But again, it's a wonderful book that any fantasy lover would really enjoy. So there's another one to consider. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas for your friend. I would recommend that you walk through our shelves because we have, as I say, many, many books, and many of them are old and rare or lesser-known authors that you can't find anywhere else. So that's always a great thing to give when you're giving someone a book as a gift. So take your time and mosey on through the shelves, and I'll see you back here in a little bit. Okay? Enjoy.